One of the first principles we need to understand before we go off-road is the effect of tyre pressures on the terrain over which we drive and the vehicle's performance. Firstly, a tyre that is very, very hard will tend to penetrate through. A tyre that is soft will tend to float. Now, for sand driving, such as this morning, the sand is actually quite wet, so it's got a lot of buoyancy. The vehicle, even with fairly hard tyres, does not sink in. But the moment the sand gets soft, a hard tyre will penetrate through, making driving difficult. So the first question is, what surface are we driving over? And how will our tyres penetrate? If they're going to penetrate a lot and reduce the power pull, absorb the power from the vehicle, then we're going to need to lower our tyre pressures. Now, we're going to go sand driving today. And the first thing we're going to do is look at the condition of the sand. And here, the sand in some places is quite compact, but where it's soft, we're going to battle. So we're going to drop the tyre pressures. Our first port of call is 1 bar. We can go lower, or we could go higher, but it's a good starting point. So I suggest that 1 bar is where we are going to start today. So to do that, we need a tyre pressure gauge. Okay, it's the first thing you're going to buy at any off-road 4x4 shop. You're going to buy a tyre pressure gauge. It's the first thing you're going to need. .5. Okay, 1 bar, good starting point. Deflated tyres, while helping the vehicle float over sand or gain more traction because of its larger footprint, are now vulnerable. Too much power can turn the rim inside a tyre, which means that it will go flat, and its bulging sidewalls are vulnerable to damage by rocks and sticks. What actually happens when you let down a tyre? Imagine this. This is a tyre, it's kind of roundish, driving along the road. And there's the road surface. That's the layer on the road. Let down the tyre and it softens. Actually, there becomes the new road surface there. That's the new footprint, much longer. Many people assume it's the fact that the tyre gets wider and that is what helps with flotation. Not really, because a radial tyre actually bends in at the bottom. So yes, it gets a bit wider, but a wide tyre has a higher rolling resistance, and that's not where the advantage is. The advantage is here. A long footprint. But there's more to it than that. I want to talk now about tyre pressures on hard ground. Hard stony ground where the rocks and stones threaten the tyre sidewalls. I'm going to demonstrate something quite interesting to you now. Okay, this tyre should be at about 2.2. Now, I'm going to let it down. There you go, 1.7 bar. Now let's see the difference. This is the exception that proves the rule. Boy, I love this job. What I was trying to explain was, if you let your tyre pressures down to a point where they are soft enough to curve, to mold themselves around an obstacle, if they do that, you get more tread on the obstacle, you get more traction. This also helps the tyres not slip off rock faces and expose themselves to damage. That was the idea behind this, but this made it worse. I'm not sure why, so we'll go and find somewhere else to go and film how it makes it better. These corrugations, you better turn off the camera while I replace my teeth. Corrugations, one of the things you've got to put up with on trails, and it's getting really bad, so it's a little trick that just eases the pain just a little bit. Let the tyre pressures down a bit. My normal pressures here are 2.8 bar. I'm going to go down to 2.2 and do that with all the tires, about 10 to 15% of the pressure. Let it out of the tires. Okay, 2.3. It'll just soften the ride, and the vehicle won't dance around quite as much as it was doing before. I hate corrugation. I hate corrugations. There are miles of them, and they never end. Actually, it's made a bit of a difference. It's definitely made a difference. Definitely made a difference. On account of the driver having chosen the most obvious path. Notice the scar from the previous vehicle's differential between the tracks. The defender driver here has been more cautious. Misjudging the vehicle's clearance can get you into trouble. Get into a habit of holding the steering wheel with your thumbs on the outside of the rim. It prevents a shock loading from hurting the fingers, particularly painful with older vehicles with non-power assisted steering. Changing gear in low range can be a jerky affair, especially when changing down a gear. Here I'm in low range second. I'm going to change into first because of an obstacle ahead. The way to do it smoothly, leave your foot on the accelerator when you depress the clutch. Smooth the silk, go through the obstacle as slow as possible. Simply allow your foot to rest on the accelerator as you depress the clutch. The revs increase, the gear goes in smoothly, release the clutch, you don't even feel it inside the vehicle, it's very smooth. The type of suspension fitted to a vehicle affects its performance over rough ground. What is seen here is typical of independent suspension. With it, ground clearance varies constantly. Notice how the clearance under the chassis, on the left of your screen, changes every time the suspension compensates for undulations. The other type of suspension, becoming less common as more vehicles are designed for better road performance at the expense of off-road performance, is the live or solid axle. Solid axles are an advantage off-road because they maintain the clearance no matter what the terrain. As the wheels ride over the ground, it lifts the differential, clearing vulnerable components from harm. This type of suspension also permits better axle articulation, better clearance, and better off-road performance. Here it is working on a dry riverbed. And here on the same riverbed is the independent suspension. The driving style with independent suspension must therefore be more cautious, particularly over rocky terrain. Looking more closely at how suspensions work in even more arduous terrain reveals how easy it is to damage a vehicle if driven too fast.